will share a few ideas about what the Club of Rome is doing in this context as a member, should I say an important member, of the Bridges Coalition. The Club of Rome is an untypical animal. I don't know how familiar are you with what we are. An organization created in 1968 by individuals, and still very much so, 150 persons, an association of 150 persons from all around the world. Untypical in that it assembles people from different sectors, disciplines, geographies, so from academia, but also from politics, policy making, business, civil society, and so on. And untypically in that it tries to break the bubbles in which we are all contained, and the logics of the bubbles, of each of the bubbles, make sense. But now we know that all the logics taken together do not make any sense because we are committing suicide as humanity. So we try to break those bubbles by the most important thing that we do actually is to ask better questions. When we are good, we ask better questions. Mostly known, of course, for the Limits to Growth published in 1972, and the question then was, can prosperity as we defined it then, but still today, lead to the collapse of human civilizations? Uncomfortable question, of course. The good questions used to be uncomfortable. So I will share with you some philosophical ideas, since Bridges is very much about the role of humanities for the future of humanity. I think it makes sense to speak at that level. And in particular, this question that is here, we try to have an integrative approach for the reconciliation between Earth and humanity, among humanity and with the Earth, as if we were not different from the Earth, from nature, and actually we are not. But of course, we have many different perspectives on that big question of how do we reconcile the Earth with humanity. And one thing we do is to hold the complexity of these multiple perspectives. So many people ask me, what is your theory of change towards a world of sustainability and regeneration? I answer, I don't know, because we have not changed yet. So let's work with all the theories of change at the same time, and this is what we call dancing with paradigms, in tribute to Donella Meadows, the lead author of the Limits to Growth. And the question is, could systemic wisdom emerge? So that's a tall order, of course. And I want to highlight a few characteristics of the fifth element. The fifth element is one program within the Club of Rome. We have others. Some of you might have heard about Earth for All. So we have a whole portfolio of activities embodying this idea that we work with different theories of change at the same time. What is the fifth element, or what does characterize the fifth element? Because we are not so fans of definitions. We like more the idea that we are in process, in collective processes of co-creation. And I would say the following, anticipating a question that my friend Louis Klein would probably ask about what has love to do with it. I chose to say the fifth element is about choosing hope and love instead of fear. Thank you. It's quite obvious that as the cracks of modern civilizations appear more publicly, more evidently, but not only the cracks of the environmental issues, of course there are plenty of them, but also the cracks of how we react to the tensions. And the way we are reacting is often very violent. It's pretty obvious that we are reacting with fear. We face reality, we realize there are threats, and that some of those threats are actually existential, and what we do often is to react with fear. There is no other explanation for what is happening, for instance, in terms of our armed conflicts, wars. There is no other explanation for the genocide in Gaza than people in fear of an existential threat, being captured by panic, and being captured by something which has been going on for a long time, which is the dehumanization. We live in a more dehumanized society than I think we used to do. And this is one of the questions for the Bridges Coalition. How do we rehumanize our societies so that we're able to choose hope and love instead of fear? Because from ancient wisdom, and I'm sure ancient wisdom knowledge, traditional knowledge from originary cultures will come out today, we know very well that choosing fear to react is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have, in many mythologies, this idea that you know in anticipation the threat on you, you learn from somebody, an oracle, the threat that is coming to you, and then if you react based on fear, what you do is to create the conditions for the realization of that threat. A self-fulfilling prophecy. The way to get out of it is by choosing hope and love, and these elements that I put here, mutual learning, unveiling blind spots, overcoming this concept of us and them, where them are other people that we dehumanize enough not to care about their future, we dehumanize enough as to be able to kill them because we think we are threatened by them, but it also includes them is also the whole life, the whole set of living beings, that we put, where we put a barrier between us and them. And it's about working across the chasm, and it's about looking for momentum, other kinds of momentum which could help. I will not get into the detail of the rest of this presentation. I mean, I've shared with the organizers just to say that we believe in this idea that for mutual learning, first, learning is always mutual. You don't learn in isolation, and I'm talking about learning as changing. We haven't learned until we have changed. Learning is not understanding, reading a book and understanding that book. It's changing our behavior according to what we have been exposed to. So, and there are, of course, different levels of learning, but all of them happen in mutuality. And in our opinion, what we need to learn can only happen by exposing ourselves across the chasms of generations, that has already been said, disciplines, of course, that is also part of the soul of Bridges, across geographies, across social separation, status, and languages, including not only verbal languages, but other forms of language. The fifth element is also built on identifying a few sources of positive momentum. That's at least what we hope and we work for, to create the conditions for that momentum to happen from young generations, but also from the way we conceive research and innovation, from the role we give to artistic practices for new meanings, the way we think of making resonate so many experiences all across the world which are trying to develop regenerative futures. Also, and this is untypical, I know, but crucial in my view, looking for that in spaces which are often looked at part of the problem, like the private sector, business, and even finance. We dare to do that. And last but not least, something that we call pluriversality, Take into account the current state of international relations, it seems obvious to us that we have to try to imagine something else, a new way of international relations beyond the quest for hegemony and beyond the competition leading to confrontation towards collaboration to address the challenges of humanity. I'm finishing this provocation with a lot of abstract ideas, I know. But again, this is a reflection driven by philosophical thinking connected to everything else, to say that one of the aspects that we look at in the Club of Rome is that crises, I mean, this sentence, the following sentence is banal, you know, crises are opportunities, and it's banal, but it's true. How do we make that possible? How do we make possible that from the crisis, something qualitatively new and better emerges? From the crisis, what is already emerging, but we know about that, is the wars, the conflicts, the cracks, the tensions, the confrontations, but something else can emerge. So actually we should welcome the crisis as the opportunity to learn something different. This is one of the elements of the soul of the Club of Rome since the beginning. Definitely this gadget doesn't want to thank you. As said, most of the people who know the Club of Rome do it because of the limits to growth 7 years later, because we anticipated that the analysis, the analytical perspective of the limits to growth would not be sufficient to make the course change. We published this incredible book, which would have deserved much more attention, No Limits to Learning, focusing our challenge or defining our challenge as a big learning exercise. 3 years ago, in the continuation of that spirit, we published Limits and Beyond, and next year we are working on a project that we decided to call No Limits to Hope, which is, part of it is No Limits to Learning 45 years later, but of course it is very much about what do we do, how do we learn? How do we learn, how could we learn what we already know with a hopeful perspective? And very last slide, just to mention that, I mean, I deliberately didn't make a list of activities in which we are involved because that would be too long, but I just want to mention this. We are, together with Bridges, we are, should I say, guilty for making the UN General Assembly approve in August 2023 an International Decade of Sciences for Sustainable Development, where two important elements are said. One is that sciences have to be mobilized for sustainable development, and the other, and even more important in my view, is that all sciences together, including traditional knowledge. So in the context of that decade, 2024-2033, we are organizing this conference in China, in Shanghai, from the 5th to the 7th November, to try to connect across the chasm of cultures, geographies, and so on, try to understand what does China mean when it speaks of an ecological civilization as their target, and how we can work together from a pluriversality of pathways towards this idea of reconciling the earth and humanity. Thank you so much.